Hello, my name is Tucker Hickman, and this is my presentation on my proposal for advancing transportation options for UF students living off of campus. So UF students have actually found themselves kind of stranded from campus, myself included. I'm a student at the University of Florida who lives off campus. I'm a second year student, and I found that there are kind of some difficulties getting to campus. Typical methods of transportation, such as the use of personal vehicles, public transportation, or even walking or biking as like a pedestrian, are just kind of unavailable to students for a variety of reasons. First of all, parking passes for undergraduates are very limited, especially undergraduates who live off campus. If you're an undergraduate who lives off campus, your only parking pass that's available to you is the Park and Ride Pass, which only allows students to park either in front of Southwest Recreation Center or in front of Fraternity Row, neither of which of these locations are necessarily close to any sort of gen ed classes or any classes in general. I know for me particularly, I have a lot of classes in the Florida gym as an APK student, and both of those locations are still 2 miles away from campus. So at that point, or still 2 miles away from my classes. So at that point, I might as well just walk or bike from where I'm at. Additionally, the regional transit system, which is the public bus system in Gainesville, have recently become unreliable due to some funding cuts from the University of Florida. This is an issue that we'll address a lot more in the future, but it's kind of made the whole system unreliable and have really upset a lot of students who used to rely on it to get to campus. And third, walking and biking to class can be an option for some, but not for all, because especially students who have certain limiting physical capabilities or students who live a lot farther than just 2 miles from campus. Additionally, I wanted to point out that being a pedestrian isn't always safe, especially like in Gainesville. In the year 2022, there were a total of 83 traffic accidents involving bicycles and 117 involving pedestrians. That's just in the year of 2022. So I guess the main question is, why is this so important? Why is this a problem that needs addressing? Well, I want to point out that 74.92% of University of Florida students live off campus and commute to get to their classes almost every single day. Um, and this is based off of numbers from 2025. So this is very recent. Um, so it's important that these students have a way of getting to their classes. They can't, if they don't have a mode of transportation, they can't get to their classes. And it's also been shown that getting to your classes and having higher attendance rates have been associated with higher final exam scores and homework scores as well. Um, so the school should care about this, students should care about this because it's what you're going to school for. It's about your grades, it's about attendance, and it's even about sharing the social space on campus. It's attending football games and clubs and organizations and other school events. That's really important for students to be able to get to campus to do so. In the picture here in the presentation, you can see this was in the fall semester of 2025. Students were gathering in Turlington Plaza to protest the funding cuts made by UF to the regional transit system. So obviously, this is another reason why it's important that the that new modes of transportation are uh, created for students to be able to get to campus because students are protesting. We want to make the students happy and lower the amount of protests that are occurring on campus. So now comes the part where we have to evaluate some of our solutions. Out of the three different modes of transportation that seem to be most common, we could try to look at improving each of those, but some of them have some more issues compared to others. For example, increasing parking for students would most likely increase traffic and accidents surrounding and on campus because you're getting a lot higher flow of cars and students who are trying to drive to get onto campus. So that could bring up a whole lot of issues. Plus, it's not necessarily realistic to increase the number of parking lots on campus. There's kind of some constraints. There's a lot of the space that we do have. The school most likely wants to continue to contribute to increasing labs and buildings for classes rather than increasing parking lots. Another thing we could do to kind of encourage pedestrians and the use of bicycles and walking to school. Um, You could implement a volunteer crossing guard organization through the school that would maybe help the roads be a little bit safer for bicyclists and walkers. You'd have people watching major intersections or roundabouts, but this doesn't necessarily mean that safety is guaranteed, and it's still difficult. It could prove to be difficult to gather enough volunteers to actually make a substantial difference. Plus, as addressed before, this doesn't necessarily fix the issue with students who have physical disabilities or incapabilities or injuries. They still wouldn't be able to get to school through this method of transportation. Finally, the last solution, which I believe is the best solution, would be improving the regional transit system and bus system. The RTS needs more funding, and this would have to come from somewhere. So that doesn't make the method necessarily super cost effective, but it would be cost effective for students because students can ride free on the buses. Plus, efficiency and reliability would increase due to funding based on the reversal of route cuts and combinations that occurred due to the UF funding cuts. And in addition, some more reasons why I support continuing to or refunding the RTS to improve efficiency of the bus systems is because it benefits so much more than just the students at the University of Florida. These buses are available to the public and to the whole community of Gainesville, so all residents or anyone who is visiting Gainesville or lives in Gainesville have access to this form of public transportation. I think this would benefit in numerous ways. One big thing is Gainesville does struggle with food accessibility. It was found in 2025 that local food shelters had reported increases from 10 to 40 phone calls daily. This just shows the food accessibility crisis. And so if people have a reliable mode of transportation that can take from their homes to grocery stores, people who don't have cars to do it on their own, if they have the bus to get to their jobs or to grocery stores, then they can get access to that food. So this would really just improve the infrastructure of Gainesville as a whole. Plus, increase in bus usage from students or the community of Gainesville as a whole could lead to less cars on the road, which would also decrease traffic surrounding the university, which has been a big problem as of recently. I myself and I know other students have noticed. So now ultimately, who should be held responsible? I believe personally that the University of Florida should be held responsible for refunding the RTS. This is about the students. This is about the community of Gainesville, which the University of Florida is directly rooted in. And so I think this responsibility should ultimately be split between the two different departments, which are most relevant, the financial analysis and budget department, and also transportation and parking services, mostly just because of the stakes they play in this situation. The financial analysis and budget department, they kind of determine where the budget gets spent, where they're spending their funding money at. And UF has stated that they want to ensure that they're using the available funding efficiently. But based on student protests and kind of the reactions that occurred after they cut funding for RTS, it doesn't seem like the funding was spent very efficiently. And especially based on the 2025-2026 operating budget, seeing that they bring in a total of $7.7 billion, I would think that there should be some wiggle room to be able to get students to get to their classes. That seems like a very big priority. In addition to that, I think the Transportation and Parking Services Department could play a big role in really increasing the efficiency of the buses as well. It's not necessarily just a money aspect. I think that by understanding students' needs for transportation and surveying students and assessing RTS data, you're able to understand which routes have the highest ride share, which can also improve public support for the system and also be able to help narrow down which bus routes need more buses going through to be able to get as many students to campus and where to campus as much as possible and as efficiently as possible. So yeah, in conclusion, there's a really big lack of transportation options on campus, and it can be a huge inconvenience for students like myself, or I know a lot of students who I'm personally friends with that have a lot of difficulty getting to school and getting to classes on times. So it's really important that the school specifically put some effort into finding a way for us to be able to get to the classes that we pay for. And I think that funding the RTS is probably the best solution. And on this slide here are all the references that I used throughout the presentation.